Now that you know how to create some queries in Access using multiple tables and adding some criteria, let's look at how you can add a parameter to a query. A parameter is used when you want to prompt the user to enter in a value so that you can then limit the record set to the value that the user has chosen. So, for example, for this one in the order date, if I included that I wanted only orders that were placed on March the 24th, when I run it, it's pulling only those in that were on March 24th. But that doesn't leave much room for the user if I've hard-coded that value in there. So maybe the user wants to enter in a different date. So what we want to do is add a parameter for that so that we can allow the user to enter in different dates. Okay, so what you would do is go back into your datasheet view, and we're going to use a parameter. And again, a parameter prompts the user to enter a value. So a parameter is included in brackets. Okay, so when you put it in brackets, you want to put the prompt to the user. So I'll put enter an order date. Okay, so it's the straight brackets. And again, what's inside of the brackets is your prompt to the user. So when you run it, notice you receive this message that says enter an order date. That's exactly what I entered right here. Okay, so then I could add my date, and then it will pull in only those values. So let's run it again, and this time I'm going to enter a different date. So maybe I had a customer that called and said, I placed an order on this date. Can you search for that? So therefore, it's much more flexible for the user to be able to enter in a value. Okay. Now I can go in if I wanted it after a certain date. I could put in the greater than equal to here, and it'll find anything that's greater than or equal to the date that they choose. So if I choose 4/5/2019, it's going to pull in anything that has 4/5 and beyond for the date. Okay, so so it's pretty flexible when you add a parameter. So let's say, for example, I could also add another criteria here, not a parameter. Maybe I want all of the ones after that date that the customer ordered a quantity of 50 or greater. Okay, and this is just a regular criteria. It's not a parameter. So I can run it, and let's add that order date. Okay, so now you can see that there are 8 that were ordered after that particular date that had a quantity of 50 or more. Okay, now we could also make this one a prompt or a parameter. And when we run it, it's going to ask us for that order date. And let's just enter the 24th again. And then it's going to prompt us enter a quantity. So then let's just say we wanted anything over 25. Okay, so it pulls in anything that matches that criteria for the order date, as well as anything that has a quantity over 25. Okay, so this works just like what we did for the criteria. So if you put it on the OR line, it's going to pull in anything with an order date after this one, or a value that's greater than the quantity they ordered. So you'll have more records in the record set if you were to run that query. Okay, so let's go in and delete those parameters. Next, let's go into the query for the product suppliers, and let's look at a couple of parameters there. So we have our product ID here, as well as some other product information, the category of the product, and the supplier information. So if we go in, you can see we've got the supplier numbers. Let's say if we wanted to pull in all the ones that were for supplier 6, which is supplier F, we could do that in a couple of different ways. If we wanted that to be a parameter, we'll put it in brackets, and you could use either the supplier ID field or the company field. So I'll use the supplier ID and just say enter supplier ID. So I can run that, and when I enter the supplier ID, I can put in supplier number 6, and I can pull those in. So now this is flexible, because if I run it again and I want to enter supplier number 2, I can do that. I'm not limited by what someone has hard-coded into the query for a value for the criteria. Okay, so it's really easy to do when you want to include a supplier. Okay, so if we look, let's go in and pull in any of those with the last name Anderson. And notice the Anderson is spelled with an E. So we can say enter last name. So that's going to be the order for the last name. So it's going to ask you for the last name. So then all we have to do is put in Anderson and click on OK, and it will pull in only those with that value. And let's do the same thing for category. Enter category. Now, the main thing you want to remember again is don't use this parameter option here. That one does not work for queries. So you want to make sure that you put your parameters down here in the criteria at the bottom and include them in those brackets. This does not work the same way as they do down here. So let's run that for the category, and let's put in candy. And there's only one that's under the category of candy, but we can go back in and let's look for beverages. Okay, so again, I can't put in the word beverage because it won't find anything. It has to be the value that's in the data. Okay, so if I put in beverage, it will not find that because that is not a value. It's beverages with an S. So there are a lot of different options that you can enter there. And it will pull in anything with that particular value. So that's kind of an overview of parameters and how those work. Remember, a parameter will prompt the user.